Chandler will attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500 with front row Motorsports, and Jenson has expressed interest in wanting to run the race at San Diego. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and Motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just some streams really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just some stranos really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2026 Ream scheme that we'll see throughout the 2026 season. I like the simplistic look of the Ream car, to be honest. There's some changes from the 2025 car. I like this car better than one they had in 2025. It looks pretty good. Looking forward to the racetrack this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2026 Choice Privileges scheme that we'll see for a few races throughout the 2026 season. I think this one looks pretty good, to be honest. I think Trackhouse knocked this one out of the park. It's different than the other Choice Privileges cars we've seen. I think it's a pretty nice looking car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2026 Workforce scheme that we'll see in about 3 or 4 NASCAR Cup Series races in 2026. Not too many changes from 2025, but honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the colors do work pretty solidly on this car. I think they did a pretty good job with this one. Looking forward to the racetrack this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Burt Meyer's 2026 Tibbetts Lumber scheme that we'll see at Bowman Gray this week. This game looks alright in my opinion. Excited to see a new sponsor for Burt Myers this year. Good to see the American team picked up a sponsor. It does look alright, and I like the colors. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2026 Gray Biffle Throwback that we'll see at Darlington Raceway. Of course, CW Sons will be the sponsor. This is an amazing tribute and throwbacks team that they're running in 2026. We got some more of those to talk about here in just a little bit. I think Alpha Prime knocked this one out of the park, and a lot of teams I know are going to be doing throwbacks throughout 2026. I think this looks phenomenal. I think it looks incredible. It looks really, really good. Definitely looking forward to the racetrack this year at Darlington. It looks amazing and incredible, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the O'Reilly race at Gateway, as they have a title sponsor for the event. The race is now going to be called the New Way 225. This is going to be an increase of the length from 2025, where the race is a 200-mile race. Now we'll go up to 225 miles. So we're 25 miles off from having a 250-mile race like Gateway used to be for the O'Reilly Series. But I think it's a step in the right direction, giving a few more laps to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. I think it's honestly a really good decision, and I like that they're extending that going into 2026 for the year. I think that's some exciting stuff. I think it's a good thing they're doing for sure, and happy to see the O'Reilly race will have more laps in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Zone. As it was announced on Friday morning that Zone will continue their partnership with Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing in 2026. They'll be the anchor sponsor for Kyle Busch throughout the 2026 season. They'll sponsor Kyle Busch this week at Bowman Gray, and then they'll sponsor him in a couple weeks from now at the Daytona 500 and a lot of races throughout the 2026 season. Zone, of course, became a sponsor for the car about a year or so ago. I like the look of the car. They're really not changing anything from the 2025 scheme, to be honest, but it seems like some people think this car is like cursed for Kyle Busch for whatever reason, but I think it's good to see the Zone is stepping up to the plate and sponsoring Kyle Busch this year. Really awesome stuff, really exciting to see, and once again, great to see that the Zone will continue that partnership and work with Kyle Busch throughout the 2026 NASCAR Cup season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Reynolds American. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Thursday that Reynolds American and the RJ Reynolds Groups has signed with Grizzly Nicotine as they will become a new sponsor for NASCAR through the 2026 season as Grizzly becomes a premier partner in the sport and official sponsor for NASCAR. Grizzly Nicotine pouches work with College Racing in the 2026 year or 25 season. I'm not sure if they're back with the team in 2026, but NASCAR's been looking to do some nicotine stuff. They were talking to Zone, I'm pretty sure, about working with them, and now they become a partner in the sport in 2026. Honestly, great to see for sure. Exciting to see that the Reynolds Group, the RJ Reynolds Group, is back in the sport after being a title sponsor for many, many years. Great to see, and good to see they're back in the sport for the 2026 year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Roto-Rooter. As it was announced on Thursday morning that Roto-Rooter will sponsor Connor Zilch in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2026. They'll sponsor for a few NASCAR Cup Series races, including at Bristol Motor Speedway in the spring. And it's also confirmed he'll be doing a double as he'll run the O'Reilly Auto Parts race at Bristol with the one, and he'll have Roto-Rooter on that car as well. The Roto-Rooter car has come out. I got to say the Trackhouse Racing and Kyle Sykes over there absolutely knocked this one out of the park. I think it looks phenomenal and really, really good. And I think it's an awesome looking machine they're going to have for the 2026 year. And it's awesome that Roto-Rooter is stepping up to the plate and sponsoring throughout 2026. So great stuff right there. Awesome to see. And like I said, I'm very happy to see this because I do want to see some racing and some cars especially. So I think Connor's Ultra's car looks solid. And again, I think it looks pretty good and it's a nice looking car. Good to see it on the racetrack this year. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar. Now, earlier today, IndyCar released their next ad campaign for the upcoming IndyCar season in 2026. That ad campaign is surrounded by Pato O'Ward. The first ad campaign they did was for Joseph Newgarden, and Pato O'Ward was the second driver. And I gotta say, it was actually a really funny ad that they did. I like the fact that they're using Pato O'Ward, who had a pretty solid year in the IndyCar series, I believe finishing second overall in the championship this season, and having generally a really solid year in IndyCar, getting a win last year. And I think Pato O'Ward, him being a driver who had a ton of success, it makes a ton of sense, in my opinion, to work with Pato O'Ward in the 2026 IndyCar season to try to grow it. But I think they did a really good job on this one. Honestly, it looks really good. Looks really, really solid. Not solid, but a really good ad if you ask me. I think they knocked it out of the park. And I think Fox did a pretty good job. Hopefully their IndyCar coverage is good, because I want to see the IndyCar coverage be good for Fox like it's been in the past. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kurt Russell. As it was announced during the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Seahawks that Kurt Russell will be the honorary pace car driver for the 2026 Daytona 500. Kurt Russell, a renowned actor who's been a great actor for many, many years, will get the chance to drive the pace car in this year's Daytona 500. This is a really big deal for the Daytona 500, and I think Kurt Russell will do a really good job behind the wheel, at least driving. Obviously, pace car drivers don't need the greatest experience, and I believe that Brett Bodine will be in the car kind of guiding them, and official will also be there as well. But I think it's really cool you have an honorary pace car driver every year, and I do expect Kurt Russell, like I said, to do a pretty solid job. I think he'll do a good job behind the wheel, and glad to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to be the honorary pace car driver for the 2026 Daytona 500. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Classics. If you're on the NASCAR Classics page over the last couple of weeks, before the end of the year, and they posted it on their Twitter page as well, all the 2023 NASCAR races for the Cup, O'Reilly, and the Craftsman Truck Series race have been uploaded on the Classics page. In addition to that, all the 2024 races have been uploaded as well, and they actually did some tributes to Greg Biffle as they uploaded Greg Biffle's first win in the Truck Series from 1999. They also uploaded Biffle's race when he won the championship in the O'Reilly Series in 2002, and they uploaded Greg Biffle's win from the Dodge Charger 500 from 2005. Honestly, at the Classics page, they've got nearly about 1,800 races on the page. I think by the end of the year, they're going to have over 2,000 across all three series, including many lower series races in the near future. I love that the Classics page is continuing to grow. I think that's a great thing that they're doing, and glad to see all the 2023 races have been uploaded. I'm hoping that we get the O'Reilly races from 2025. Not sure why they haven't uploaded at this point. Maybe it's something with the CW, not sure. But nonetheless, I think it's good, and I think it's great that all the 23 races have been uploaded for all three series. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Spectrum. Now, many of you on social media probably noticed this over the course of the last couple days, but it looks like Charter and Spectrum will be sponsoring Carson Hocevar in the 2026 NASCAR Cup season. Now, this is not officially confirmed at this time, but judging by the fact that if you look at the production day photos that Charter and Spectrum are going to be in the sport, it looks like they will be sponsoring Carson Hocevar this season. This is a big deal for them. Obviously, I think Spectrum does have association with Gamebridge, I'm pretty sure. And this would also be the first time that Charter has been in the sport in many years. I remember when they sponsored RFK many years ago for Greg Biffle and Carl Edwards in the mid-2000s, and also sponsored some other drivers over the years. I think they did some stuff with the Everham team in the late 2000s, I'm pretty sure, and then Richard Petty Motorsports in the early 2010s. So if it is true that this is happening, I think it's a really exciting thing. And it'd be cool to see a Spectrum car out there and Charter be involved in that. I think that'd be something that'd be really exciting. We'll see if that happens. I've got a feeling that it has happened, though, judging by the things that I've seen. I think it'd be really cool for it to happen, and we'll see if it does happen. But like I said, I do think that Spectrum will be sponsored, which I think will be awesome to see that on the track. A car made like that, I think that'll be awesome. And I think for fans, it could be something really good to see out on the racetrack, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Rolex 24 from 2026. Now, I did a race review of the Rolex 24 earlier today on the channel, or yesterday when you're watching the video. This race would be dominated by one organization, and that was Team Penske, aka the Penske Porsches, the 6 and the number 7. Now, near the end of the race, the number 31 gave a shot an opportunity to go to victory lane, but Team Penske was too strong at the end, and Jack Aitken, who was driving to 31, the same car that Connor Zilisch was behind the wheel of, he ran up chance an opportunity to make the move for the overall win and victory, and the 7 car went to victory lane, and that's the 3rd year in a row that Penske's won. There's only 2 other organizations, I believe, in IMSA history that have won 3 straight, that being Wayne Taylor Racing, won, I believe, from 2017 up until 2019, and then, of course, Chip Ganassi Racing in the late 2000s to the early 2010s, with the victory lane 3 times in a row. Congrats to Penske on the win. There's a lot of work that definitely needs to be done on the BOP without question, and hopefully the BOP can be improved going forward in the future, because that's something that needs to be worked on in IMSA. That's been a problem for many, many years, and I think that's something without question that definitely will need to be worked on at some point in the not-so-distant future to make the racing better. But Penske did struggle at the end of last year. That's something worthy to note that a lot of people have mentioned, so keep that in mind when you see a lot of complaining. But I think the BOP has been an issue in IMSA for a bit. They got to figure it out because it's a big problem. But nonetheless, congratulations to Team Penske on winning this year's Rolex 24. Not the most enthralling at times. You had the big fog storm that happened and other stuff that happened too. But again, congratulations to Penske on winning the 2026 Rolex 24. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Weenie 500. Now, yesterday I talked about the story on the channel, but it was announced late last night that the Weenie 500 will officially be returning in 2026. But instead of being on Fox's YouTube channel or on IndyCar's YouTube channel in general, it actually will be televised during Carb Day on May 22nd on main Fox, and basically after the practice sessions take place on the final day. Obviously, the Weenie 500 coming back is not shocking and surprising. It was a major, major event for IndyCar, especially during Carb Day. A lot of people tuned in. I think it got like 8 million views or something like that, I'm pretty sure. And the numbers, especially for the streaming side of things, and the amount of people that tuned in, like 8 million impressions, and people saw it on Twitter, among other things. And Oscar Mayer got a lot of people interested, and they got a bigger following because of it as well. I'm interested to see if any real world drivers will get involved in this year's Weenie 500, and I think it should be something exciting that fans, I think, are really going to enjoy. And it makes the Indy 500 feel a lot bigger when you have big events like this that are exciting, even if there's controversy that can happen. IndyCar from time to time, having big events like this, especially all stuff and chaos that's going on at this point in the world, having a fun event like this is something that I think a lot of fans should be enjoying. So awesome news right there, and once again, great to see that this event will be coming back in 2026. I like big events like this. I think it should be exciting, and I think for most fans, it should be a really fun event. Looking forward to this event happening this upcoming year and happening this upcoming season and returning for the Indy 500 weekend in the 2026 year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about GK Racing. As they confirmed earlier this evening that GK Racing will be entering the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Daytona International Speedway. Clay Greenfield, who's one of the co-owners of the team and organization, will be the driver of the truck, and the number they'll be using is the number they've used in the past, and that is going to be the number 95. Now, GK Racing, I believe, made a few starts in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025, and they'll be looking to run, it sounds like from what I've heard, a few races in the 2026 year. Now, they will have to qualify their way in because the 95 truck does not have enough owners points, and you have a lot of teams that are showing up. Obviously, you have Colic, who's expanded, and you're going to have a lot of trucks that will likely be at Daytona International Speedway. Now, one thing that this team does have a big advantage of, though, is a driver they have behind the wheel. I consider Clay Greenfield to be a pretty solid super speedway racer. He's had some good runs at super speedways over the years, and that veteran experience, I think, is going to play a major part, a major role in really helping Clay Greenfield have a chance and opportunity to be fast and really, really competitive this upcoming year and season, depending on the races. And again, I could see them running a lot of big races, not just Daytona. They do run Talladega, and maybe they're going to run Martinsville later in the year as well. And maybe they run Bristol as well, because it's kind of close to, I think, where their headquarters are located at this point. But they don't plan to run full-time through 2026. So again, I'm glad to see that Clay Greenfield will be returning this year and season. Glad to see him back on the track at Daytona and hopefully they'll run more races this year. See this car back for a little bit, and once again, I'm just excited to see this because I want to see more trucks on the track, and I think it's big that this team will be back this year. We'll see if they can make the show and see if they can make the event this year and have a chance and opportunity to qualify in the event, as there will definitely be a lot of competition trying to make the Truck Series race at Daytona, like the cars from Kaulig, for example, this year, and some other teams that are expanding as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Natalie Decker. As it was reported by Small Budget Racing a couple days ago that it looks like Natalie Decker's ride may have accidentally been leaked, as she is going to run in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Daytona International Speedway. Well, nothing's been officially announced and confirmed. It sounds like Natalie Decker will be driving an NBM Motorsports truck or car in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series in 2026. Now, what could the number be at Daytona? When I think of NBM, I think of 2 or 3 numbers. One of them is the number 40. 40 was a number that NBM used many years ago in the mid to late 2010s. They ran that car, I think, for Chad Fincham at points. They ran that car, I think, for Jeffrey Earnhardt in a few races as well. And I think even Carl Long got behind the wheel of the number 40. There also is the number 13. The 13's also been synonymous with this team for a very, very long time. Carl Long's driven it. Timmy Hill has driven it. Also, the first time we saw the the main Prime sponsorship that KSI and Logan Paul own. And there's been other people who have driven the 13, like Chad Fincham, like Josh Bilicki. And in the main number 66, that last year we saw Tyler Tomasi get behind the wheel. David Starr made a start in the car. And I even think Josh Bilicki made a one-off start in that car in the O'Reilly Series as well. But most likely it is going to be the number 66. I imagine we are going to get official confirmation on what ride she'll end up running in the 2026 year. And my question is this the only race that she is going to run in 2026, or is she going to run more races than just Daytona? Could she run Talladega? Could she run some short tracks like Bristol or Martinsville? Could she run a road course later this year? Because she does have a lot of experience on road courses. I think that's something to pay attention to as time progresses and goes on, and as more entries do get announced for the near and not so distant future. And I think a lot of fans will be excited regardless of what happens with her, because there's some people that do like her, even though I don't think she's the greatest driver in the world. I think it's good to see her back behind the wheel. We'll see what she can do, but it sounds like, again, she'll be with NBM Motorsports and drive an NBM Motorsports car in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race here very, very soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chad Fincham. As it was confirmed earlier today that Chad Fincham will be driving number 66 for Garage 66 at the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium this upcoming week. Now, at the time of recording this video going into Monday, there's still no official sponsor announced, and they're asking for someone to bring sponsorship in so they can make it out to the track. Otherwise, they may have some issues getting out to the track. But obviously, this is not surprising. We've heard that the 66 Garage 66 car was planning to run around 26 to 27 NASCAR Cup Series races. We do know Josh Bilicki is going to drive the 66 at, I believe, a race coming up here soon at Watkins Glen in April going into May. Also, we know that Casey Mears is going to drive the 66 at this year's 500 and potentially Atlanta as well. And then we also know Chad Fincham may be running at tracks like Bristol later down the road as well. So again, I'm not shocked and surprised by this news, but I'm excited for Chad because I think Chad is a very talented driver who has won some races in ARCA and ARCA East and West especially, competing for championships in that series respectively. And I think Chad could show some really good stuff if given the right shot and opportunity. So nonetheless, really great news to see. Congratulations, Chad, on getting the chance and opportunity. And we'll see he can be fast. I think he'll have a chance. And I certainly think he'll have a good opportunity to be competitive in that 66. Looking forward to see what he can do at Bowman Gray and see if he can make the main event. Not sure how the pace and speed is going to be there. But once again, glad to see him getting a shot and opportunity to drive the 66 this upcoming week at Bowman Gray. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. As on Friday, they officially announced their late model lineup for the 2026 late model season. Caden Quaffle is going to be full-time in the number 88 car, I believe, for the car store season this year. Wyatt Miller is going to make select starts in the number 73, which is the number that Wyatt Miller has used coming up to the ranks, including in the dirt scene. And Dale Jr. is also going to drive the number 8 for select races, with those races to be announced in the not-so-distant future. Now, it is unknown and unclear if Dale Jr. is going to have the Budweiser sponsorship like he had in 2024 and 2025, or he'll have a new sponsor, maybe like Travelers Whiskey, that's going to sponsor Justin Allgaier at the Daytona 500 this year. Not sure at this point. Again, we don't know what races Dale Jr. is going to run in 2026. But I'm glad to see this late model program is coming back. Obviously, we kind of expected that the late model program would be returning in 2026, considering the late model programs won a lot of championships, won a lot of races over the years with a lot of really talented and a lot of really, really good drivers. And Caden is, of course, the younger brother of Carson Quaffles, had a ton of success and might win some races with Rodney Childers this year. And I think the most important thing is they got this figured out. Good to see the late model program returning. I think, again, they'll show some pretty good pace and speed. I think fans should be really happy about this that are in the motorsports circles. And once again, very happy and glad to see that a late model program for Junior Motorsports will be officially back and officially returning in the 2026 year, and the All Series and the other series as well going forward. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Caleb Koster. As it was confirmed earlier this week on Thursday that Caleb Koster will be bringing his ARCA team up to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. Caleb Koster is going to be the driver of this team, and they will be called Koster Motorsports, and he'll drive the number 93 at Daytona and select races throughout the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck season. Caleb Koster has been a veteran of the ARCA Menard Series for many years. He also, of course, may select starts in the number 74 car for Mike Harmon Racing and select races in 2025, and will be making a lot of starts throughout 2026. And I think it's good to see that Caleb is going to have the opportunity to race. Obviously, he's someone that I've wanted to see come do some NASCAR stuff, and I think he did an okay job, all things considered, because I don't think Mike Harmon Racing is the fastest organization out there. So I think it's good to see him getting the chance and opportunity to bring his own team and own program up to the series in 2026. I think there's potential for this program if they can bring the pace and speed. Otherwise, not sure if they're going to be super fast and really, really competitive. But I'm glad to see this news once again. And I want to see more teams out there, like I mentioned before. So good to see the Koster team showing up in trucks this upcoming year. We'll see if the pace and speed can be there for Koster. And we'll see if Caleb can show some really good stuff and be a competitive driver in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series with the 93 team in 2026. Really good stuff to see. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christian Horner. Now, there's been a lot of reports and a lot of rumors surrounding Christian Horner for the 2026 Formula One season. A big rumor that's been circulating is Christian Horner is currently in talks to buy a stake in the Alpine Formula One program going into 2026. Now, it's been reported that Christian Horner would not buy a full entire stake in the program. He would just buy a minority stake in the team. Now, we don't know the percentages at this point. My best guess is Christian Horner will probably buy about a 15 to 20% stake in the team. But obviously, after departing Red Bull, being let go by Red Bull at the end of 24 and in the middle of 2025, and losing his opportunity to work with that team, Christian Horner has been wanting to get back into sport. He's been rumored to be looking to buy into teams and organizations, and this has been a rumor, like I said, that has been circulating for quite some time. So I'm not really shocked and surprised by this news, and once this does get confirmed, we'll probably talk about it on the channel officially. But I do like hearing, I know people have their thoughts on Christian Horner. A lot of controversy. People think he was part of the problem over at the Red Bull team and organization. And I feel like Red Bull near the end of last year, they got a lot quicker and a lot faster. Red Bull's had a lot of restructuring as of late. So I think having some changes over there, maybe it'll bring some toxicity over to Alpine. Who knows at this point? But it's certainly interesting that Christian Horner is looking to buy a stake in Alpine, which would be a big move and be a pretty big deal if he does, in fact, buy a stake in Alpine going into 2026 Formula One season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Washington, D.C. Now, there's been a lot of rumors out there about potentially IndyCar racing in Washington, D.C. for 2026. And now, of course, we know the IndyCar schedule has already been released at this point. But one of the rumors circulating that David Lamb brought up is potentially one of the Milwaukee races would go away, shall this go through. Now, President Donald Trump and Secretary Duffy are the two people that are currently behind trying to push this deal to go past the line for 2026. And it sounds like this race would be celebrate the 250th anniversary of America. It would take place on August 2nd or 3rd, where one of the Milwaukee races would end up taking place. Well, I think that this would be certainly a really huge story for the sport and would be one of the biggest motorsports races because of the big publicity that it could get. It also could cause a lot of controversy if it does get across the line. And obviously, there's a lot of people that don't like the president, and there's a lot of people, of course, that personally that do not want to see more street course races. And for me, that's the big thing. I understand if they would do it. it'd be a really huge deal, and a lot of people would tune in, especially to Fox. But obviously, you have a lot of the budget situations, and I think more people want ovals than the street courses at this point. So I think it'd be a really interesting, and I think it could be a really big deal if it happens. I'm not sure if it will happen. It's going to be very tough, especially this late in the game. And I would hate it for Milwaukee because Milwaukee's put on some great racing. Yes, it would add another track to the circuit. But like I said, I don't want to see more street courses. If we're going to add more tracks, we should add more ovals at this point. So I think those are going to be the best tracks to put on the best racing in my personal opinion. So we'll see if it does happen. But like I said, there's talks about it. I would be interested if it would happen. We'll see if it does in fact happen. And I think it would be a huge deal if they were to have a race in DC. It sounds like they're really pushing for it at this point, which would also be controversial if it was to happen in 2026, especially with fans from Milwaukee. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Palou and Arrow McLaren. Now, we all know that there has been a lawsuit that's been going on between Alex Palou and McLaren. That was until, of course, Friday, when a resolution was reached, according to Nathan Brown from the Indy Star and other reporters like Bob Pockers as well. A resolution has been reached, and Alex Palou will be forced to pay $12 million in restitution. Now, it is worth noting that was a breach of contract situation, and it's also worth noting that Alex Palou himself will not be required to pay any of the money, or he'll be required, but Chip Ganassi himself is going to pay out the money to make sure that Alex Palou does not leave the team or organization going forward. Obviously, there were some comments that were made by the judge, I'm pretty sure, where the judge basically said that he would have had a chance and opportunity to win a lot of races had he gone to Arrow McLaren, which, to be real and honest, I don't know how a judge can basically determine that a driver would have had a shot an opportunity to win races because he's not driven a race car in his life, it seems like the judge. So how can he really tell? I don't know. And it may be a biased court considering where this was taking place. This was taking place in the UK. McLaren, of course, is from the UK. But also, I understand why they're asking for it, and I understand that things have been figured out. Seems like Chip Ganassi's team might be looking to do something else about this. I know David Land's going to have more of a topic in the near future on this coming out. But certainly, definitely a big story for sure. And a huge deal that they're going to have to pay $12 million. And I'm glad a resolution was figured out here, but this is still a big story nonetheless. And kind of crazy to see that it got to this point. Thought this would have been resolved. Maybe it could have been settled out of court, but it wasn't settled out of court. And now you're going to have Alex Palou and Chip Ganassi Racing paying a lot of money, which is $12 million, which is a lot of money and a lot of crazy money they've lost at this point. Kind of wild to see this story reach the point it has, and I think it was kind of a crazy story nonetheless that it got to this point for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing and RFK Racing. Now, I talked about the story on the channel on Thursday, but Kaulig Racing and RFK Racing are both going to be doing tributes to Greg Biffle in 2026. All four RFK Racing drivers, the 99 driven by Corey LaJoie, the 60 of Ryan Preece, Brad Gzowski in the 6, and Chris Buescher in the 17 are all going to be doing tribute numbers to Greg Biffle for this year's Daytona 500, where they're all going to have stylized Greg Biffle numbers for the 2026 Daytona 500. Meanwhile, AJ Allmendinger is going to be driving a stylized number 16 for this year's Daytona 500, and they'll have the iconic look of that machine. Also, all RFK racing cars throughout the 2026 year are going to have a decal honoring Greg Biffle, and there will be some honoring that's going to happen before the Clash takes place later this week. Obviously, a really, really awesome thing they're doing. I think it's amazing to see all the tributes that have been happening. I wish we could do some throwbacks throughout the year. Obviously, there might be a reason why they're not doing throwbacks, considering Throwback Weekend really won't be a thing, which we'll talk about here in just a short little bit, which I do find to be incredibly disappointing. There really isn't going to be any sort of Throwback Weekend going into the year in season, but I think it's amazing that Kaulig and RFK are going to be doing tributes. We're still thinking about Greg Biffle, a very tragic and unfortunate situation that happened in Statesville, North Carolina. And it's news that you never want to hear and you never want to talk about, but unfortunately sometimes we do in really difficult situations. But we honor people that did amazing things in this sport, and Greg Biffle 100% for sure did amazing things, and it's amazing when we can do great and awesome tributes to people like Greg, who was an amazing individual, did a lot of things for the community and stuff. So good tributes by Kaulig and RFK, and really awesome and great stuff to see that they're doing a lot of the tributes going into the upcoming year, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Fox Sports. As Fox Sports on Thursday confirmed their 2026 lineup, especially for this weekend's clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. Now, Mike Joy will be returning the call for the 26th consecutive year with Fox. Clint Boyer and Kevin Harvick are back. Clint will be in his 6th year with Fox, and Kevin Harvick will be in his 3rd consecutive year. Jamie Little will be on pit road, I believe, with Jamie McMurray, and Regan Smith also be down there as well. And Jamie McMurray and I believe Chris Myers will be doing the pre-race show. So not too many people are going to be there for the clash. Now, I would imagine that there's going to be more of an arsenal for the 2026 Daytona 500. I did see that Blake McCandless will be part of the Fox coverage in some way, shape, or form. Maybe he's going to be doing some pit report stuff. And I know that Josh Sims is also supposed to be involved with Fox's coverage throughout 2026. But obviously, Fox is cut back for the clash. Not shocking and surprising. We all know that Fox really doesn't care at this point, considering we've complained about the truck broadcast for a while. They really haven't changed the Fox broadcast over there, and I think there's a lot of things that Fox really needs to work on to get their broadcast a lot better. And like I said, I don't truly think they've made the right and correct moves to make the broadcast as good as they truly can, in my opinion. Now, as in regards to Mike Joy, I think this likely will be Mike Joy's potential final season unless he wants to come back in 2027, because Mike Joy is going to be 77 at the end of the year, and most time lead broadcasters don't end up going much longer than that. So I imagine we're in one of the latest years for Mike Joy being a commentator, which at that point, you got to look toward the future, and maybe getting Eric Brennan a chance and opportunity. But I'd be also kind of crazy to see him go to 50 years at this point. I think that'd be wild and kind of crazy if that does in fact end up happening. But nonetheless, when it comes to Mike Joy, congrats on an amazing career. If this is truly his last year, we'll have to wait and see if it is his last year in the sport. But I think Fox's broadcast lineup could definitely be worse, but it certainly could be a lot better, especially for the truck broadcast. So I think those truck broadcasts have been lackadaisical and not very good as of recently, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pacific Life. Now, it was reported by Jennifer Fryer initially and Adams, and I believe it was Matt Weaver as well, that apparently Pacific Life wants a lawsuit against Kyle Busch dismissed against Kyle Busch and his wife Samantha. Apparently there were some statute of limitations that might have been breached, and there's some other stuff that was breached as well. Now, as far as I know, Kyle Busch and his family have been working with an insurance company called Pacific Life for down payment toward the future for his kids and everybody, and they lost a lot of money with this company, which definitely was very unfortunate, and a lot of big-time celebrities and also a lot of people kind of like that don't have as much money as Kyle Busch and a lot of other celebrities have. They basically lose a lot of money from a lot of these insurance companies. And hearing news like that was really unfortunate. Now, it's worth noting that Judge Kenneth Bell, who was involved in the 2011 and NASCAR lawsuit, which we're going to talk about here with the stuff in the new charter agreement that kind of came out here in just a short little bit. But obviously, I don't see Judge Kenneth Bell dismissing this suit. I think they've pushed the date of it back, I'm pretty sure, into early February, which I think is certainly interesting for sure. And I think it's going to be the middle of February that the court case will likely be heard. And I'm interested to see what the resolution will be, whether they'll kind of get it resolved or if they'll continue hearing it. I imagine Kyle Busch's team is going to be like, no, we want to go to court because you kind of screwed us out of a lot of money at this point. So I'll be interested to see if they push toward it or they back away from it going in the future. Nonetheless, kind of crazy story. This is continuing on. A big story for sure, and want to keep an eye out on as time progresses and goes on. See if maybe, just maybe, there's a resolution between a Pacific Life company and Kyle Busch in the near and not so distant future, and also Samantha as well. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Now, a couple of nights ago on Friday was the NASCAR Hall of Fame ceremony. The main people getting inducted in the Hall of Fame in the Pioneer ballot were Ray Hendrick, who won over 700 races across all major motorsports and won a lot of championships in his racing career as well. And in the modern era ballot, it was Kurt Busch, 2004 NASCAR Cup Series champion, winner of the Coca-Cola 600 2010 and the Daytona 500 in 2017, and one with a lot of organizations like RFK, Team Penske, 2311, won an O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race with Phoenix Racing, also got a win with Kyle Busch Motorsports in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series as well. Also picked up wins with Stewart Haas Racing, including the Daytona 500, and one with a lot of crew chiefs in his career. And finally, Harry Gant, a.k.a. Handsome Harry Gant. A very successful driver, the oldest winner in the NASCAR Cup Series, winning his last race in Michigan, won the Southern 500 twice in 1984 and 1991. He also, of course, had a ton of success winning and being Mr. September, going 4 in a row in 1991, and being a very successful driver in his older age. Congratulations, all three, on being inducted in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Well deserved for all three individuals. I think a lot of other individuals like Deb Williams got the Ken Squire Award for Excellence, and Humphrey Wheeler got another big award and almost got inducted for another big side of things. A Landmark Award is one he got for 2026. But again, congratulations, all three on being inducted. Kurt was very emotional. The Hendrick family was emotional. And Harry, again, you could tell was definitely a little emotional, but he also congratulated the other individuals that got inducted as well. So again, congratulations to everyone that got inducted in the Hall of Fame. Well deserved for each of them, and a big deal to see every single one of them officially inducted in a NASCAR Hall of Fame for 2026. And we now wait for the 2027 induction ceremony. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Greg Biffle. Now, obviously, before the situation and basically life remembrance happened, apparently someone had gone to Greg Biffle's house and stolen around $30,000, according to what cops have said. Now, obviously, of course, we did not get the security footage until a couple days ago. I think it was Matt Van Swol, who's got a big personality on Twitter, and he posted some of the security footage that has been obtained by a lot of individuals, and it looks like there might have been a female individual that was in the house that might have been doing it. Now, there's been some accusations that have been thrown out in regards to who this individual is. Some have said it is his ex-wife. I can't really tell, to be honest, from the images. I'm not going to accuse in that situation. But obviously, with this coming out, I think that is a really, really big deal. Regardless of who it is and who the individual is, I really hope that they are prosecuted and brought to jail, can get the money back at this point, and get all the stolen property taken back as well that they sold, because it was totally unacceptable what happened, and they deserve to go to jail for doing something like this, in my opinion. So I'm glad we got the security footage at this point. I'm interested to see if more than just one individual was involved in this, or if she was the only individual that was involved in this case. Be a story to pay attention to as time progresses and goes on, but we got that situation, and we'll pay attention to it, and once we find something out about it, we'll talk about it on this channel in the near and not so distant future. This is a big story that someone tried to rob Greg Biffle after his unfortunate passing, and I think anyone that does that is scummy, and in my opinion, they're a very scummy person if you do something like that to me, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nice Motorsports. As it was announced on Friday morning that Nice Motorsports will be switching from the number 41 to the number 4 truck in the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season. The numbers they're going to have this year are the number 4, the 42, the 43, and 44. We know many of the drivers have been announced. Travis Pastrana is going to race. Parker Eatman is going to be announced. Connor Jones is going to race this year. Also, Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Landon Lewis, and a few other names that I would imagine are expected to be announced in the near future. There's rumors also about Kyle Busch potentially driving in one of those trucks, though he's also rumored for Spire Motorsports as well. Now, speaking of going back to number 4 truck, there's been a lot of rumblings about who could drive the 4 truck in 2026. We'll look no further than a post that was put out, I believe, on Friday morning. And the name that many people are associating with the number 4 truck is Connor Hall. Now, Connor Hall drove the number 4 car for Nice Motorsports, funny enough, in a late model. And he kind of linked it a little bit in a post, but accidentally leaked it. I've heard for a while, going back, I believe back to October, that Connor Hall's name has been heavily linked to be racing in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year. I had heard it was going to be a majority race splitting a ride with Matt Mills. It doesn't sound like Matt Mills will be with Nice Motorsports this upcoming year, which for him is unfortunate, but he's just not been that good, sadly. And I think Nice needs to really focus on getting a performance in those trucks going forward into the future. But for Connor Hall, very talented guy. He was a 1-point link to be driving for one of the Kaulig Ram trucks for 2026. Obviously, that did not end up happening. Speaking of which, that Kaulig Gong Show is going on at the moment. I still need to tune in the first episode at this point, even though I kind of already know who won the Gong Show at this point. But obviously, Connor Hall, if he is truly in the 4, that'd be a really huge deal for him. And I think he'd earn the right and opportunity to get behind the wheel of that truck. But we're waiting for things to be officially confirmed and announced on that Ford truck. Because, like I said, from what I understand and from everything I've heard, Connor Hall has been the guy that's been heavily linked. And with only a few weeks to go, that announcement is coming in the near future. And again, Nice Motorsports and other teams like Henderson are teasing some stuff for 2026. It's good to see her switching her number up for the upcoming year and season. And I think Connor Hall, if he is truly the driver for this truck, I think he's earned the right and opportunity. We'll see if he ends up being truly the guy to get behind the wheel. It'd be really awesome for that for sure. We'll see if it ends up truly happening, and we'll see if Connor Hall is the driver. Because like I said, that's the name I've heard, and that's a rumor. We'll wait for it to be confirmed for sure. But like I said, I do think he is most likely the guy who gets behind the wheel of the number 4 truck for this team and organization in 2026. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, is back in the Cup Series full-time in 2026 in the number 97. With Winning Your In being gone, there's been a lot of people have asked him questions about his thoughts on Winning Your In going into the upcoming year and season. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen obviously did say and gave his thoughts on the format, and he says it does kind of suck that Winning Your In is gone because that's a big reason why I am in that car in the first place, mainly because the sponsors that he had, like WeatherTech, Red Bull, were coming over to sponsor him, mainly because of that. But he also does say there's a big positive to the chase. He says it is a more pure form of racing, and it's going to be more pure, and he thinks that a lot of fans are going to like it as well, and he does enjoy the fact that it's a more pure form of racing. I think that is the most important thing when it comes to Shane Van Gisbergen, because people need to remember this. While Shane Van Gisbergen, yes, wasn't great on ovals in the beginning of the year, he got better in the second half of the year and second half of the season. And I think that him getting better and showing more pace and speed, I think that's going to be important if you are a Shane Van Gisbergen fan. He had top 5 and top 10 speed on ovals. He had top 10. He had got a top 10 at Kansas. Had top 10 speed at Vegas. Good in New Hampshire if we're getting turned by Brad Keselowski. I think when it comes to SVG, he's a very talented guy who's always getting closer to being up front and wants to learn and get better. And I think his chance of making the chase in 2026 is actually really, really high. Because I think he is going to have the pace and speed to be a factor and contender. He's going to have, of course, the same crew he's working with, which that crew is going to get stronger and get better. And I think that's going to be big for him going forward down the road, especially for Shane, because I want to see him be quick and be competitive. And like I said, I do truly think that he is going to be like that in the NASCAR series in 2026, because I think he's going to be a guy you're going to have to watch out for this year, especially on the ovals. Looking forward to seeing him back in the series. I think he will certainly be quick and certainly competitive in the series in 2026 and probably make the chase. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the new charter agreement. Now, obviously, there's a new charter agreement that's coming in for 2026. Every single team will be getting charters for the upcoming year and season. And apparently, according to Jenna Fryer, the new agreement has been officially sent out. Now, teams have until the end of this upcoming week to sign the new charter agreement before the clash at Bowman Gray kicks off. Now, obviously, if they don't sign the new charter agreement for 2026, they can just fall back on the 2025 charter agreement where they got more money, but they wouldn't get any of the money to the new IPA rights. They wouldn't get some of the other stuff, but they will get to keep their charters going forward. Now, one team we know for sure that has signed the new charter agreement is 2311 Racing. It's noted they have officially signed that charter agreement for the upcoming year, as Denny Hamlin did confirm, which we're going to talk about Denny Hamlin here in just a short little bit. Obviously, like I said, the new charter agreement certainly very, very important. I think most fans, I know some don't like charters, but you got to have charters in the sport because there's issues with getting sponsorship. There's not enough money coming in the sport, and having charters currently at the moment is the one thing that's keeping a lot of these teams and a lot of people afloat in the industry currently at the moment right now. So I understand a lot of people not liking charters. And again, I will say this, I expect most teams to sign the charter agreement here in the not-so-distant future. And I do think you're going to have a lot of big teams that will officially confirm that. Probably statements coming out. Hendrick's probably already signed it. Penske's probably already signed it. Wood Brothers probably already signed it at this point. RCR might be the team that doesn't sign it, especially after all the information that came out. And we know Richard Schultz is still not very happy about the outcome of certain things from the lawsuit at this point. But I do think when it comes to it, it's good to see most teams are going to sign it. And I think it's good also that 2311 is likely going to sign that charter agreement. So I think it's a big deal for them. And I think they'll get that charter agreement signed. And most teams will sign it in the not-so-distant future, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. Now, Connor Zilisch, of course, competed last night in the Rolex 24. And early in the morning, I think it was early today or yesterday or Saturday, I should say, people in NASCAR, like Marty Sider, and people that were on the Peacock Bit Box, asked Connor Zilisch, could you eventually go down and race in Formula One? Well, Connor Zilisch said he is not saying no to Formula One. He says that if he does have a ton of success in NASCAR in the first 2 years, he may look to go and do some stuff in Formula One. Now, the team he'd like to drive for, if he was to go to Formula One, would certainly be Cadillac. That would make a lot of sense, considering they are an American-based team. And Cadillac is owned by Spire in a sense, because Dan Towers owns the Cadillac team. And Spire is owned by Dan Towers. And Connor Zilisch has driven for Spire Motorsports multiple times in the Truck Series, and also almost did in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series as well. As much as I do want to see Connor eventually get the chance and opportunity to go to Formula One, I think it's going to take time for him to get up to speed in NASCAR. It will take a few years because it's not just going to be an instant jump. I get a lot of people have predicted that Connor is going to win races in NASCAR in year number one. I'm not super confident in that at this point. Yes, I think Connor is going to be quick and show some good pace and speed. But again, like I said, it's going to take time for Connor to get adjusted to the next-gen car. I don't think he's going to instantly win on road courses also like some people are thinking he's going to do. But I think it'd be awesome to see Connor go to Formula One in the future and be successful in Cadillac. And of all the drivers in NASCAR today, maybe outside of Kyle Larson, Zilisch has the best chance. But he's also only going to be 20 this year, so he has a few years. Let's say he dominates like he does in O'Reilly. You never know. He's probably going to win some race in O'Reilly this year, maybe win a racing cup. I think that could open up a chance and opportunity in the future for him to do some stuff in NASCAR in the future, and we'll see if it happens because I think it'd be great to see him at Formula One. But right now, because he's going to be likely to Indy 500 in the near future, and I think it's something that could happen down the road, is to see Connor Zilisch do some stuff in Formula One, most likely for Cadillac in the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Throwback Weekend. Now, I talked about the story on the channel on Thursday or going into Friday last week, but it was confirmed by Bob Pockers that Throwback Weekend will not be a thing really going into 2026. As reported by Bob, teams will not have to do throwbacks in 2026, and that will not be the main focus in the upcoming year at Darlington. There will be some stuff around alumni, and there will still be some celebrations for Throwback Weekend this year, but the throwback paint schemes will not be the main thing for the NASCAR Cup Series this year. To hear this news was definitely really disappointing. There's been a lot of rumors and a lot of rumblings about this, and a lot of people, especially near the middle of last year when the Throwback Weekend was a thing, there was a lot of push against it, mainly from one individual by the name of Chase Elliott, who had probably the worst throwback we've seen in NASCAR history, up there with the Stenhouse throwbacks that we saw with the tie rides in early 2020s, where that ride crashed when they returned in 2020, and then, of course, some of the other throwbacks as well. And I think there's a lot of the people that were against it. He had some drivers against it, while people like Joey Logano, even Kyle Busch, were supportive of Throwback Weekend, and Brad Keselowski was also supportive of Throwback Weekend, same with Denny Hamlin as well. But a lot of the younger drivers were against Throwback Weekend. Look, I will say this about Throwback Weekend. Hate seeing it going away, but I'm not shocked and surprised. But it's disappointing because I think Throwback Weekend was one of the few weekends that, and one of the few things in the last couple of years that NASCAR has done the last decade that I think they've done an amazing job on. But I think the course where this kind of started falling apart was when they moved it off the Southern 500 weekend, because they wanted to put focus on the playoffs after 2020. 2021, they moved the Throwback Weekend to the weekend of Mother's Day. And most teams still participated in 2021. But every year since 2021, the number that did it was dropping. And this year in Cup, only about half the teams did it. That doesn't mean there were a lot of teams that didn't do it. A lot of teams like Hendrick, they killed it. Kyle Larson every single year did it. But you had teams like the 23 Bubba Wallace didn't do a throwback this year. Tyler Reddick did not do a throwback in 25. I know Bubba was against Throwback Weekend as well. He had some good throwbacks, though. Denny Hamlin did a great Carl Edwards throwback, and other drivers did great throwbacks. Like I think that Denny did a Ray Hendrick one a few years ago. But I've said this before. I think eventually what's going to go away which sucks because I think Throwback Weekend was a great thing. But I've said this before. We should just move to North Wilkesboro. I think North Wilkesboro makes a lot more sense. Or do a Retro Weekend. That make a lot more sense because I hate seeing that Throwback Weekend just won't be a thing this year. I hate to see it because I think Throwback Weekend is a great thing. And it was a great thing that they've done since 2015. But I think that especially with the broadcast not being as good, not putting as much focus on the Throwback Weekend, played a role in that. Thank you, Fox, for that, by the way, because your coverage hasn't been so good. But you hate hearing this because I think that this was a big reason. Throwback Weekend was one of the biggest reasons why Carl Edwards returned. He got in the booth, came back up for a little bit, and now he's back in the sport doing commentary with Amazon. So things like this were huge. Now, Alumni Network is still going to be a thing, which that's exciting, but I'll probably do a video in the future talking about my favorite throwbacks all the time since it's no longer a thing. Ashamed to see it going away, but it's disappointing. There were a lot of great throwbacks out there. Always great 24 ones. 48 usually a pretty good one. Some of them were hit or miss in the past, but nonetheless, hate this news, and it sucks to see that Throwback Weekend will not be a thing in 2026. Wish it was, but it won't be a thing, unfortunately, anymore going into the 2026 NASCAR Cup season and for the lower series as well. Though it sounds like the O'Reilly series will be doing throwbacks, which they always killed it in Overshadow Cup, especially in the last couple of years. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, we talked about a story on the channel also on Thursday going the afternoon, but Denny Hamlin did confirm that he is not planning on missing the Clash in 2026. Now, Denny Hamlin, of course, has some unfortunate tragedies that happened. His father sadly passed away at the end of last year in a house fire that broke out a couple days before the end of 2025. And his father, unfortunately, passed away, I believe, from smoke inhalation. His mother also did, of course, go to the hospital. Denny Hamlin did say that his mother is doing a lot better. And there were some questions around whether Denny Hamlin was truly ready to get back behind the wheel. Now, Denny did say that he is still trying to recover from a lot of stuff that happened, including the lawsuit as well. But Denny Hamlin does say that he is not planning to miss the Clash and is not planning to miss any races in the 2026 NASCAR season. Denny said he told Joe Gibbs he made a promise that he would be back on the racetrack and isn't planning to miss any races anytime soon. First of all, I still feel terrible for Denny. Denny's been through a lot. The way the championship ended last year was incredibly unfortunate. Now, yes, of course, Kyle Larson still deserves a championship, by the way, because Larson would have won the championship under a full season format. But that's neither here nor there at this point. The point is that Hamlin lost the championship the way he lost it, and it was incredibly unfortunate, and all the stuff with the lawsuit and all the pressure. But Denny Hamlin also, he signed a contract through 2027. And I think Hamlin wants to focus on trying to still have an opportunity to win a Cup Series championship. And Denny Hamlin, I think, is still, even though I don't think Denny Hamlin's going to win 6 races like he did in 2025, for example, I think Hamlin's still going to get a few victories. And Hamlin is going to be really pushing himself. Because Denny Hamlin is a lot better driver now than he certainly was when he was a lot younger, when the pressure got to him. And when he was 30, he is certainly a better driver now. And most of the time, you don't have drivers in their upper age performing at a really strong level. Denny Hamlin is one of those exceptions. He's performing at an incredible and amazing level in the sport and is doing a phenomenal and incredible job racing. And I think Denny's going to continue doing that for the next 2 years. Denny, I think, wants to get the 70 NASCAR Cup wins. He'd have to average, I think, 5 wins a year. He's got 60 career victories. 70 would be an incredible goal. He'll likely pass Kyle Busch this year, who only has 2 or 3 more wins than Hamlin. It's going to be tough to catch Dale Earnhardt because he had to win 8 races a year. I just don't know if Joe Gibbs Racing is going to have that insane pace and speed. But I think, again, the most important thing is Hamlin isn't missing any races and fully putting focus on trying to win his first championship, trying to get Joe Gibbs a first championship since, 2019, been 7 years since they last won, and get him a championship in a consistent era. So we'll see if that happens. Not sure if Hamlin will win as many races this year, but glad to see he's not missing any races, not planning to miss the Clash. Again, seems like Hamlin's doing at least a little bit okay, and we'll see what his focus. We'll see if he can be competitive. So I think he'll be fast, and I certainly think he'll be competitive in the Cup Series this year in 2026, though I don't think he'll win as many races as he did in 2025, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Jenson Button. Now, Jenson Button was on the IMSA broadcast, I think it was on Saturday, I'm pretty sure, going into the late afternoon when they were on the Peacock Pit Box. And Marty Sider, who was, of course, on the Peacock Pit Box all day, he asked Jenson Button, I know you did say you were retiring at the end of 2025 after racing in some of the IMSA races and doing some of the World Endurance Championship races with the Jota team. But are you interested in racing in NASCAR? Because there is some stuff happening at San Diego. Well, Jenson Button did confirm that he is not ruling out that possibility, and it seems like he's interested in racing in NASCAR in 2026. As he said on the broadcast, if there's a team open for me racing in 2026, he said he'd be interested in running at the Chicago Street Course. Now, obviously, Jenson Button has made starts in NASCAR before. He made a few starts back in 2023. He ran, of course, I think at Circuit Americas early in the year with Rick Ware Racing, and he also ran at the Chicago Street Course, which he did make the final round of qualifying back in 2023. The race that, of course, that Shane Van Gisbergen picked up his first career NASCAR Cup Series win in victory. And Jenson Button also did have some good speed. And he then, I think, was looking to do some stuff in 2024 and maybe even 2025, but then put full focus on World Endurance Championship. Also got the opportunity to do this because he ran the Garage 56 entry where he was, of course, teammates with Jimmy Johnson and Mike Rockefeller, which gave him the opportunity to do some stuff in NASCAR as well. Now, the big question is, what teams can Jenson Button run for? Now, obviously, he has a 4 connection, so maybe he could drive the RFK number 99 if he wants to do the Cup Series race. I think that would be certainly interesting because I think it'd be great to see him run some Cup Series stuff again. And RFK's got a pretty solid road course program on top of it as well, so that would make a lot of sense. But then you look at the O'Reilly and the truck races. When I think of the Truck Series, there's one team in particular that comes to mind. The Kaulig All-Star truck. We already know, of course, that Tony Stewart is going to be driving his truck. We've heard rumors of Casey Kane. We have heard rumors of Robbie Gordon and Cleveland Farm. We've also heard other rumors of other drivers, like I think Robbie Gordon has been mentioned, and I've heard other big name drivers mentioned like Matt Kenseth, Ryan Newman, and some of the drivers part of the Gong Show that didn't win are going to drive an AJ Allmendinger maybe as well. Jenson would be a perfect candidate. He'd be an all-star name. He'd be a really huge deal, and I think Jenson would absolutely, with that question, make a ton of sense to get behind the wheel of that. There's also the 42 truck for Nice. He could drive for that team. They've got a decent program. Not an amazing program by any stretch of imagination, but I think that program would absolutely also make a lot of sense for him to get behind the wheel, and I certainly think it'd be fun to see him run at the Chicago Street Course there. Then, of course, you have the one truck, but Jimmy's already running that, so Jimmy and him are good friends, and maybe he drives another Tricon truck that we're not thinking about, or drives a Harmer Friesen Racing. And then, of course, you have the O'Reilly Series. Not sure rides are going to be available. You got SPS Racing. They haven't announced what their plans are. I know they're close to announcing some stuff. Maybe they're going to do some stuff with him. Maybe Hedinger, drive for Ford there. Maybe he does that. Maybe he does some stuff with McAnally in trucks. Maybe he does some stuff there. Who knows at this point? But I think it'd be really awesome to see Jenson Button race in NASCAR. I certainly think it'd be great for the sport if it could happen, because I think it'd be a really huge deal if he got the chance and opportunity. It'd be fun to see happen, and I certainly think he could be really fast and competitive, because while he hasn't raced in NASCAR in a few years, I think having him get a chance and opportunity to race, again, would be a really huge deal. We'll see if it happens, and we'll see if he does get that chance and opportunity to race in NASCAR. Sounds like he's working on a deal. Jax Hofford is interested, but he doesn't have a ride right now. Jordan Taylor, by the way, said he's not got anything planned at this point in NASCAR, so we'll see what goes there, but it sounds like he's interested. I hope Jenson Button gets a chance and opportunity to run in NASCAR in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Chandler Smith. Now, we talked about this story on the channel late Thursday afternoon going into the evening, but it was officially confirmed and shockingly announced that Chandler Smith is going to attempt to qualify for the 2026 Daytona 500. He will drive in a Ford Front Row Motorsports entry, the number 36 car. This means that Front Row will have 4 cars enter for the Daytona 500. Obviously, if they're 3 full-time guys, Todd Gillen, the 34, Noah Gragson in the 4, and Zane Smith in the number 38. Now, obviously, of course, Chandler Smith will be running full-time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, working with John Leonard once again. His first year with the Front Row team was pretty good. He did make the round of 10 in the playoffs last year and did show some good pace and really, really good speed. But unfortunately, they had some issues near the end of the year and technicalities. But going into 2026, we know that he's one of the championship favorites going into the upcoming year. He's going to be up there with Lane Riggs, Caden Honeycutt, and other drivers. But this ride is kind of surprising because I initially thought, okay, front row's been rumored to be having a fourth car. I had heard Lane Riggs also was looking to maybe drive this fourth car and driving the Daytona 500. But then I kept hearing Chandler Smith's name. I thought maybe, okay, we're going to see him maybe be a substitute for Brad Keselowski if Brad can't make it. Then I thought about Corey LaJoie. But then we found out Corey LaJoie is driving 99 for RFK Racing. But going back real quickly to discuss the driver, Chandler Smith. This will be the third time that we have seen Chandler Smith attempt to qualify for the Daytona 500. He tried to qualify back in 2023 with Colleague Racing. He showed some good speed with them and did have a fast enough car to make it in, but unfortunately didn't make it because he got caught up in a crash with Colleague Racing there. His second time he drove the 66 caused a big wreck, unfortunately, during the duels. Originally, a car that was going to be driven by Mike Walls. Obviously, of course, that didn't end up happening for him making the field, but he did have decent speed, so maybe third time is a charm. Now, the big advantage for Chandler Smith, he's driving a front row car. Front row's got really fast speed. Of course, they've won the pole a lot of super speedways recently. Zane Smith got a pole at Talladega last year, and they generally qualify up front as super speedways. The other big advantage Ford's usually fast. So I think that's a big advantage for Chandler Smith. Now, I think he's got a good shot. Now, let's talk about all the open entries. Obviously, Jimmy Johnson, he's already locked into the Daytona 500 this year with the open exemption provision. You got Corey LaJoie in the 99. I think he's got a good chance to make it in on pace and speed. I think that 99 is going to be quick and really fast and one of the favorites to get in and be the fastest there. You got the 40 of Justin Allgaier. Allgaier is probably going to have a fast car. Allgaier is really good. Junior Motorsports made it last year, got a top 10. I think the 40 car has the best chance to make it in there. We obviously know there's a lot of rumors about Corey Heim entering the Daytona 500 with 2311 Racing. I do expect more than likely that you're going to see Corey Heim drive 2311 for 10 to 15 races. Then, of course, you have some other rides. You've got the 66 Garage 66 with Casey Mears, who came close to winning Daytona 500 20 years ago in the 42 car with Chip Ganassi. So maybe we see that team make it. Then you got, again, like I mentioned, you've got other teams. BJ McLeod for Live Fast. JJ Ely for NY Racing. You've got rumors of RCR entering a car. You've got Beer Motorsports with Anthony Alfredo. This field is becoming very, very stacked. While you don't have big names like Elio Castroneves showing up this year, you still have a really strong and really good class going into this year's Daytona 500. And Chandler Smith, like I mentioned before, is no exception. He's going to have a chance and opportunity to be really competitive this year in the Daytona 500. I think he's going to certainly bring a really good car this year. And I think there's a good chance he makes the 500 on pure pace and speed. But I'm excited about this and glad to see if Chandler is getting a chance and opportunity to run the Daytona 500 this year. And I think we'll have a chance and opportunity to show some good stuff in this year's Daytona 500. So that's for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on. Soon if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me through Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go to more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about Chandler Smith entering the Daytona 500 with front row? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all their stories, including Denny Hamlin not missing the Clash, and of course Jenson being interested? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any other major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have the interest for the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. That should be coming out tomorrow. Wednesday should be a NASCAR news video. Thursday, paint schemes, race picks, news video. Then, of course, on Friday, news video. And then Saturday and Sunday, reactions to the Clash. And if anything interesting comes out, we'll talk about it on the channel. Got a lot of content coming up, people like Haley Deegan, Shaman Gisberg, and Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Charlie Creed, Sam Ayer, Frankie Muniz, Cletus Safran, Dodger, and Brad Keselowski, Gray Biffle, Denny Hamlin. Other stuff like Connor Zilch, Junior Motorsports, Red Bull, WeatherTech, Hardee's, Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Michael Jordan, you name it, Eric Almirola, Tony Stewart, Casey Kane, Colleague, Brendan Butterby, McQueen, Justin Haley, and all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and weeks as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.